Welcome back to Writing Bastards. I'm Neil, and I'm here with my friend Drake. Today we're
Hey,
going to
how's it
talk
going?
about characters. So I think the first discussion that I want to have on characters is comparing Gladiator 1 and Gladiator 2. Gladiator 2 just came out, went and saw it, and I watched the first one right before I went to theaters to see the next one, so I could compare them. Obviously, love the first movie, and I'm curious. That's my question to you. First of all, what did you think? And then maybe we'll get into talking about the characters in both shows and how they're different. What are your reactions?
Yeah. It's hard. It's hard. Uh, yeah, to even like where to begin? Because I think the hardest thing when I saw Gladiator 1 is if you compare the two of them. In Gladiator 1 you have Russell Crowe. And it's very hard to follow up any movie with Russell Crowe because he's just he's a really good actor. And he really portrayed his character well of being this war veteran general who's not young, but he's not necessarily old. I would have put him maybe in his late 30s, early 40s. And comparing that to the gladiator in the second one, who is Lucius, and he's maybe in his early 30s, mid 30s. Um, I think so. That's kind of where I would start with the very beginning. When you're looking at them, they're extremely different characters. To like from the get go, they're different characters because one has a very big warrior background, the other one doesn't.
Doesn't have a background.
Yeah. I mean, all I know is he was it I don't think they ever explained it. Maybe you caught this, but the entire movie I was okay, so he was a prince. His mom, this is a spoiler. If it's a spoiler, I don't know, maybe the trailer gave this away. The trailer gave a lot way too much information out too. But he went to somewhere in Africa that's I can't remember where. And he's a warrior there and he gives orders, but I don't really know why he gives orders because it doesn't really explain what his rank is. But he's so I'm assuming okay, he's some sort of captain, lieutenant, general, whatever the military rank equivalent would have been for the time, and he's in charge of people. Um, I feel like his character, I thought the actor did with what information he probably was given, did a good job, but I don't think the second character was written poorly, very poorly in my opinion. But I think the actor, so yeah, I like the actor. The actor did good with what he was probably given. I never blame actors. That's the first thing I need to disclose. I don't blame actors. It's always director's fault. But I think it was pretty bad compared to the Maximus. The character in the second one was extremely poor. I don't know. How did you feel about it?
Yeah, I thought it was actually like a really bad movie. Like
Okay.
I
Okay.
I'm I'm always happy to see like an epic war movie. They don't
Mm,
make very many of them these days, so
no.
like in that sense, like I'm happy they made the movie,
Hmm.
and I want more of these movies to be made because it's like my favorite genre. So in that sense, I was happy, and what I think is good is some of the scenes were kind of like a spectacle, like the first
Hmm.
like water battle scene, like that's cool to see, like where they're like
Yeah.
attacking the city and all the boats and stuff.
Yeah.
So I like that, and like that is good. And I think some of the actors did what they could with what they had.
Hmm.
So I agree with you on that. Like they had a good cast, right?
Yeah.
Like
Really, star-studded, star-packed cast. I mean, huge.
yeah, but I think the characters were the biggest flaw in the movie. There's some pretty
Hmm.
bad plot holes too that just like really retconned
Hmm.
like the first show in weird ways that I didn't like.
Yeah.
Like they kind
Yeah.
of like basically insinuating that the first Maximus guy like had a kid with the lady. I'm like that's just not what his character would do. That kind of cancels out
Hmm.
who he was in the first show. And then the whole
Yep.
premise of the show is like that whatever Maximus did in the first show was basically irrelevant and didn't matter.
Hmm.
And that's really annoying. I'm like, I don't want to like think about the first
Yeah.
movie that I like as if it had no impact. That's kind of the second one did. So those are the
Mm.
plot problems, but really like the character
Hmm.
stuff. This is I totally agree. From the beginning, it was so weird with the main guy, that Lucius dude, because there's no explanation of him. And if you compare it to the original Gladiator, there's some really key character building that happens in the first like 25 minutes that set
Hmm.
up the show in a different way. So like in the first movie, he's shown as a general, like there's many scenes of like his troops showing respect to him, and
Hmm.
then he commands a battle. And so it's like you have all this context, and then there's these scenes of him talking with the emperor, and like the emperor has all this trust in him, thinks he's a good person. And then there's the stuff around how the emperor wants to give him power, but he doesn't want it, and he's just trying to like get back to his family. Like all that stuff sets
Hmm.
up everything so that once he becomes a gladiator, it's like you know who he is, and you know that he's here unjustly, and
Hmm.
he's like hyper competent. And so you're kind of waiting for him to unleash that on people. And when he
Hmm.
becomes a leader of the gladiators, like uh it makes sense because he
Hmm.
actually his acting, he looks like a good leader, and then it makes sense for his character to be a leader because he's like the best leader in Rome. But then
Hmm.
compared to the second movie, it starts with just this guy who's like embracing, he like makes out with his wife, and then they're like, oh, there's a battle. And then suddenly it cuts to
Yeah.
him like giving a pep talk, and then he's just motivated by revenge. But that's very basic compared to the first movie, where he's not only motivated by revenge, like he's unjustly attacked by Commodus. Like he was supposed to be the ruler. It's not just that someone killed his family in like a normal battle. It's like he was supposed to be the ruler and someone usurped him and then went and like killed his innocent family. Whereas in this
Hmm.
next movie, it's like a random battle and his wife is a combatant. So it's like I don't even feel like
Yep.
his motivation is as interesting. It's like very generic revenge plot. So
Well, with
right from the get-go, all of that is different, and that made it worse, I think.
yeah, I got so much to say what you just said.
Go ahead,
Um,
and feel free to disagree with me too.
no, no, no.
If you liked it, that's totally fine. But
No.
go
So
ahead.
I'm gonna try and remember everything because I have a lot to say with that. So the first plot hole that you mentioned was with Russell Crowe being his dad. I actually tried to do the math. They don't really give you age numbers of anyone, but I'm thinking, okay, so in like the scenes that you see Maximus's son with his wife who are killed, kids anywhere from like youngest 5, really rough 5, to like 8, and Lucius is like maybe 12 at max in the early scenes. So I'm the only way I could like plot hole fix that was that he hadn't known his wife. For some reason, he has a relationship with the queen that then goes away within a year or two, and he hooks up with his wife. But then he's just like absentee father from the Lucius, and that's still the problem to me. His character is a very honor-driven, masculine, almost like your standard kind of masculine, honorable hero. He's generic in that way, but not. It's not. I don't know. It works really well, and so that
Yeah,
was my
in
big
the
problem.
original show, they said they were the same age in the first movie, and then
Did they?
in this movie, they like switched his age to make him older, I think is what happened.
Lucius,
But
they
I'm
made
like,
him older.
they
Okay.
totally retconned the ages, and I'm like,
Oh,
okay,
that's
like,
annoying. That's okay. So I didn't know that. I
yeah.
had watched the first Gladiator maybe 2 weeks before I saw the new one. So okay, so never mind. So my theory is already debunked. Gee, thank you for debunking me. Thank you.
Well,
Just
even if what you
I
said is
was
true, I agree with you that it's like if he knew he had a kid, like he wouldn't like abandon it or
yeah.
whatever.
Why
You
is he
know, like
so
it just wasn't.
absentee father? It always bothers me in movies when you have these characters that are always talking about honor, and the whole movie their actions are very honorable, and then the sequel is trying to say, oh, well, he had an affair. I don't know. That annoyed the heck out of me. But
Yeah.
oh yeah. What else did I want want to say? I think too. Oh yeah, about the revenge plot line. I don't know if you caught this, but this is the biggest problem that made me so mad with the new one is that the guy, what is his name? It was Pedro Pascal. What was his character's name? I cannot remember.
Who knows?
Pedro Pascal, anyway. So if you watch that scene, like this, it's burned into my brain after I watched it, is his wife is like sitting up there just like dumping arrows at something. I don't really know what. And then she hits him or like comes close to hitting him. I think it was like the arrow hit the ground by him, the general, and he's all like, "Men, kill her." So then the archer next to him is like, "Funk," and just one shots her right in the chest. And my problem with that was the rest of the movie he wants to kill the general. But to me, it kind of messes with the revenge plotline because usually in a revenge plotline, it's like a very specific character. I mean, very specific. It's like, and they brutally kill the person you like in the first Gladiator. I get that maybe Commodus didn't kill Russell Crowe's wife, but you never actually see them get killed, and so I think it's easier for the audience to just, oh yeah, we hate this guy, and he's the one that killed him, right? You don't actually see their death, and I think that's a very smart thing to do sometimes when you want all the audience anger directed at one guy. Because when the random archer shot his wife, to me, I was like, okay, like he did give the order, but at the same time, there's a couple problems that like she's a warrior. Like warriors die. Like this happens all the time. I mean, sure you want revenge on your friend who gets killed, but I mean, it's almost like you should have wait, what did you think was going to happen? I mean, you have this little band guarding this wall of like 30 dudes and the Roman army is coming with like 20 ships. Like the odds it's like you someone like everyone's gonna basically die. Like to me that was a giver. So that bothered me a ton because the rest of the movie he's all pissed off at this general and he's trying to kill this general. But then at the very end he kind of comes to terms that like, oh, you know what? Like you were just doing your duty. But they do it terribly. They don't even pull that off well. Cuz like I think that would have been a good way to I mean it was a good idea, right? I think there's some movies that do this well. Um I think one movie is like The Last Samurai where he kills the girl's husband that he falls in love with. It's still weird, but they come to like this mutual understanding that like, I was just doing my duty, right? Like I was just doing what I was ordered to do and told to do. And I think that movie did it way better than this Gladiator, where it was kind of like he's like, Lucius, I'm sorry. Like, I love your mom and I love you. I was just doing what I was told to by these psychopath emperors. Like, I'm really trying to be a good guy, but like, it just like, it just felt like it was just, I don't know, it was just a plot device. It didn't feel like genuine. It was just, you know,
Yeah, yeah. How I would have done it to make it different is they shouldn't have just like instantly shot the wife and had that be it. Like if they wanted him to actually have revenge, it should have been
yeah,
more like he was nearby and then he saw the general do something like, like kill her in a way that's like really terrible and like he
mm-hmm,
sees and is like taunting him or something like that instead of just like
yeah,
random archer like she's like a
well,
normal
yeah,
casualty of war. Like that would have made
yeah,
it a lot more personal.
mm-hmm,
um and it's interesting with his character arc too because he when he meets Denzel Washington, again, I don't even care about any of these people's actual names. Um, but he meets Denzel Washington and Denzel's like, "Oh yeah, you have like anger, like that's like your trait is
oh
that you have
yeah,
rage." And I'm like, there is no background for this character. He doesn't seem like he has rage at all. He's just like a standard guy. I'm like, if they wanted him to have like
yeah,
that be a central part of his character, I don't know why in like the battle they didn't have him like lose control and like do
berserk
something
mode,
maybe he shouldn't have done that he regrets
mm-hmm,
later, or have some past examples of that, have that be more central to his character, and again make the way his wife died
mm-hmm,
be like a little more personal and terrible, and then the rage part would have made more sense. It was like that
mm-hmm,
just it just felt like they skipped steps. It's kind of weak. And then I agree
yeah.
with you by the end when he confronts the general. Um, it doesn't make sense. Like, I think he should still be mad at the general. Like, why does he
Hmm.
care if the general is like the husband of his mom? Like at that point in
Yeah.
time, he didn't like his mom, and
No.
that like if he's been blaming the general for the death of his wife this whole time, I don't understand how anything the general said would have changed his mind. Like that guy still is, if that's who you're blaming for this, like you should continue and take your revenge. But
Hmm.
because they only had that scene like two-thirds of the way through the movie, they have to like make that not be the resolution, and they have to make other characters,
Yeah.
exist.
Hmm.
So it just doesn't make sense. Like they should have had the crazy Emperor twins go to the battlefield and pick out his wife and like kill her as like to send a message or something, and
Hmm.
then he would have keyed in on like the emperors are the ones that are bad and that's who I want to like go after, like something like that. It
Yes.
just would have made it make more
Hmm.
sense, but they
Yeah.
switched to the bad guy was like two-thirds of the way through, and then they switch it again to Denzel Washington in the last like 10% of the movie,
Yep.
and it's like you switch bad guys twice. Like I
Yeah.
can't follow this main character's motivations because they're changing.
Yeah,
So
I mean, the only reason Denzel Washington ended up becoming the bad guy at the end is because he shot his mom. If he hadn't have shot his mom, nothing would have made him. He's just a manipulative. I'll be honest. I think the best character was Denzel Washington's character. I mean, I feel like when you think of a character who is written the best out of that whole show, I feel like he was because he had he had more complexity than the others, but I still think his problem is his motivation was really bad too. I mean, I think that's my big problem I had with most of this movie is like, what is everybody's motivation? I mean, even Denzel Washington, it's like he was like a gladiator, and that's why he wants to kill and just. But the thing is, he's just killing everybody. He kills his mom. He kills the twins. Like, so does he want Rome or does he just want Rome and chaos? Like it's kind of like I didn't know if he was trying to build his own Rome, or if he was trying to be like the Joker from The Dark Knight and just like burn everything. Like so I think that was my problem because I think Denzel Washington could have been a very compelling bad guy to have like to switch to him, right? I think there could have been a very well played revenge or where Denzel Washington betrays the main character. I mean, yeah, his character had loads of potential. And I think I agree with you that I feel like what would have almost been better is that the main character kills that general. And when he kills him, he realizes maybe later on in the movie that this revenge was pointless because he wasn't actually responsible for it. I think that would have been cool to see because then you have this character who really made the wrong choice and now has this guilt. And I think and you need that in movies sometimes if you don't have like a well established character because that could have played into his rage, right? He's a rageful guy. He just loses control and he kills this emperor. I mean, not the emperor, the general out of rage, going berserk mode. And then he comes to later and kind of realizes like, oh, shoot, like this guy wasn't the bad guy. Dang it, it was really Denzel Washington. Ooh, well now I need to actually I realize that revenge is the not the right thing to do. I'm gonna become this moral, honorable character. And then I think even at the end when he could have gone to kill whoever, and instead of killing them, had more of a honorable ending. Because I think they did that in Gladiator 1 really well, is where when he's killing the Commodus out of revenge, it's the whole fight is an unfair fight for Russell Crowe from the beginning, and so you can kind of see I don't know he like maintains his honor through the fight because even at the end, like Commodus pulls out an extra dagger. I think that was what was cool to me about Gladiator One is that final scene really shows you each of the characters. It shows wow he's willing to win throw honor aside, just no matter what. Where Russell Crowe, like at one point, he doesn't have a sword. He's got to pick it up. He's been poisoned. I mean, that was a cool thing because I felt like throughout the second movie, it didn't really have a strong character. There was no really, I felt like there's really no morality in the movie that was in Gladiator 1. because Gladiator 1 was pretty much saying that like society can become corrupt, but being steadfast and having honor and doing the right thing is worth it in the long run. Whereas this other one, I just felt like the message was just chaos. The characters were
Yeah,
chaos, everything was chaos.
I think that's a good idea. Like if he actually was fleshed out as a character with this rage trait,
Mm-hmm.
and then, that became like his flaw, that would have been more compelling for sure.
Yep.
And yeah, I agree. Denzel Washington, his character was one of the more interesting ones on screen, which maybe it's just
Mm-hmm.
because he's a good actor,
Yeah, it
but
could have been that, yeah.
still suffered from like no backstory, no
Mm-hmm.
explanation, and yeah, like the
Yeah.
motivations at the end didn't make sense. The last thing that's really odd is the way the movie ends, with
Oh.
him suddenly caring about Rome a ton. I'm like, this dude went from like 6 months earlier being like, I hate Rome and I don't care about it,
If it was
to
six
being
months.
like, yeah, to being like, oh, like, I stand for like what Rome should be. Like, just super weird. But basically,
Mm-hmm.
I have this theory about modern movies, and I think it's that directors understand that a lot of audiences want a nice visual spectacle. Um, they want recognizable actors who are popular.
Mm-hmm.
So Paul Mescal's like recently quite popular.
Mm-hmm.
Same with Pedro Pascal. And so they're going to focus on those things, and plot and script matter less, because there have been
Mm.
movies that have gotten away with somewhat high box office earnings without focusing on plot, and sometimes
Mm.
without focusing on script. And I also think this gets back to writing. I think it's easy to throw money at visual effects. You can build a big team, and like if you want good visual effects, you can make it happen. If you want to do that, you
Mm-hmm.
can. But I think writing is trickier because you can't just throw more money at the writers as easily. It probably works to an extent, but like at the end of the day, you need like a set of writers who are going to decide like what the story is, like what the script is. And if you have the wrong people, or if the director doesn't care as much, then that's just going to be what you get, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think they've realized that that kind of works, and it has with this movie. Like I think it made quite a lot of money in the box office. So it's like
Yeah.
I
Mm-hmm.
guess it worked, even though most people like who think about movies think that it's not good. Um, so
Mm.
yeah, it's kind of unfortunate, but
No, I would agree with your analysis there, your theory. I think one movie that really bothered me that did this too was the second Avatar.
I agree. Yeah.
I really liked the Avatar too. Don't get me wrong, I really liked it, but the biggest problem I think is they betrayed the characters that were established in the first film because I mean, and this is a little deviating from Gladiator, but I'll make it really quick. Is that like Jake Sully or Sam Worthington in the first movie is this gung ho soldier. Like he like is feet first into hell kind of mentality the whole movie. And I'm sorry, but when you have a person like that, it's very hard to break that out of a real person. I mean, it just gets so encoded in your DNA that it's really hard to break that. And in the second movie, it starts with him leading an assault on a train. He's like machine gunning the crap out of these people. Just, yep, same kind of guy. But then he gets all freaked out because his one kid like gets hit by a grenade. Like he doesn't even get hit by a grenade. I don't even really remember. His kid just gets like kind of in sketchy territory, but he brought his kids with them, like to begin with. So the rest of the movie, he's just like running away from his problems and oh, we're gonna get killed. Like we have to go start over. Like and he just goes like pacifist mode, which doesn't really make a ton of sense to me. Like because in the first movie, he's in love with this lady, who's a warrior. She almost dies like multiple times, but you don't see him like running away afterwards. I mean, yeah, but so no, I agree. I think nowadays it's very much just entertaining action movies.
Well,
with no substance.
Avatar is the prime example of a movie that optimizes for visual effects.
Yeah.
And look, like the first Avatar movie, actually, when it came out, had amazing visual effects. And so it makes
Hmm.
sense that it was really successful. And the plot is like, I'm kind of a sucker for that, like Dances with Wolves type of plot.
Same. Yeah. That's a
It's the same as
classic
Last
plot.
Samurai.
Yeah, I think it started with there's a TV series, the book Shogun. I think it kind of started with that because he falls in love with the foreign person and learns their ways. Happens with Dances with Wolves. It's a timeless story. I mean, I think some people argue that it's annoying, but I think it's a cool way to open an audience's eyes to a culture that they are not familiar with, but you give someone that's relatable to so that they can relate. I mean, Dances with Wolves, I think, is pretty relatable because like I don't know anything about Native American culture, but when he goes there, I feel like him because he's an outsider, you know. I can grasp how he feels, and so it's kind of like I experience it with him.
Yeah, I mean, well, it's been told through several successful movies.
Hmm.
It's clearly a story that people generally seem to like.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, like the characters are fine in Avatar 1. Like I don't think any of the characters are super compelling, but there's some decent
Yeah.
ones. That's not what stands out, right? It's the visual
Hmm.
effects.
Yep.
But I'm like, most movies cannot expect to measure up to Avatar in terms of visual effects. So when
Yeah.
other movies try to do that, where they don't focus on plot as much, they don't
Hmm.
focus on characters, and they focus on effects, but it's like not as groundbreaking, then I'm like,
Hmm.
it's just not going to be as good. Like I'm not going to talk about the movie much
Hmm.
after I see it. I'll just forget about it.
Yeah, I think it's the
So
main thing talked about Avatar though is the visuals.
right, yeah.
It's not.
So if you're gonna go that far and be the best, then great. But
Hmm.
other than that, I just wish there was more focus on characters. But
I would agree. I would agree.
anyway, I wanted to talk about characters and writing, but maybe we wrap this one up and do another episode on that next.
Sounds good.
Um, okay, catch you next time.
Okay, see you guys.